There's an ugliness that's out there right now where, there's certain podcasts out there that if you're a racist, if you're an anti-Semite, if you're a psycho-nationalist and you want a softball interview, there's podcasts out there where you can, and they will laugh at your fucking bad jokes. Worldview is like, it's apolitical, and it's trying to bring people together.
Bill Burr, the sharp-tongued veteran comedian, is fed up with today's giant podcast circus, like a parent losing it on a kid screaming in the supermarket.
By the way, dude, the elk's been delicious.
Thank you. How do you like it?
I've been chowing it for like 4 days. Like, out of respect for that fucking elk that you shot. It's like I'm eating all this shit. I don't care if it's fucking bad.
Does it make you more aggressive?
What?
Massive podcasts sell themselves as thought-provoking, but really they're softballs for people who should be called out. Hosts laugh off bigotry and conspiracy like it's cool, and that damage ripples beyond the mic.
So is your goal to clear out? Your hope is if I make fun of it, I will clear out the distraction and focus on the...
No, what I was doing then was I was just trashing both sides.
just to do it.
Burr calls out a sickness on the airwaves. If you're racist or a conspiracy theorist, these big podcasts hand you the mic. Not to challenge, but to chuckle with you. The sick part is when hosts can't distinguish between laughter and thought, believing that humorously responding to an extremist's awful one-liner somehow exonerates the idea. Burr denies that this is harmless comedy. It's a pernicious influence, a noxious dissemination in the public arena, and it has real ramifications.
Ugly thing that's going on out there, and, it's the kind of things we've already seen this, and we've seen what it does to a nation, and it's not the way to go. It's not the way to go.
History shows normalizing poison only makes it stronger. With podcasts reaching millions unchecked, that poison spreads like wildfire, and Burr won't stand for it. Burr is furious because the vast majority of podcast bros do not understand the power they possess.
So, and then at the same time, you're talking about billionaires, you're talking about stuff like this, and people on the left have been really embracing you, and they're sharing your videos.
No, that's not true, dude.
Certain parts
that's
of the
not
left.
True.
Up until this point, Burr's the type of person who usually avoids making judgments about the messy media landscape, opting instead to create jokes that highlight hypocrisy without ever having to take sides in a debate over policy. But when he sees frat boy Ryan Serhant wannabe podcasting millionaire obsessed with Lululemon sitting across from prime ministers as though they are ordering wings, even Burr can't hold back. Burr sees frat bros treating prime ministers like wingmen, laughing over dumb shit. These aren't media moments, they're a disaster for public discourse. And the fact that this sort of absurdity is allowable is the same kind of lazy thinking that he hates.
In certain portions of the right.
Sure.
There's common sense on both sides.
Sure.
But we keep doing this shit. Where it's like, oh, the right's all fucking racist, and dude, the left is some of the most fucking. Most of the left feels like if they have a black friend, they don't have issues. Okay, I'm out of that.
Yes,
I'm out of that.
What stands out with Burr is that he doesn't pretend to be above it all, like so many of these podcasters do. His frankness blows away the performance. In one snippet of his rant, he outright states that he would never attempt to interview a presidential candidate, not because he's scared of opinions, but rather because he knows his limits. He is a comedian, not a policy analyst. Burr won't play policy analyst. Hard questions? These podcasts ditch them for chit-chat about snacks and sports. Scary part? Millions think that's enough to vote on. Burr will not let comedy stand in for civic authority, and that alone makes his approach safe. Most of these mainstream podcast figures would never admit to being underqualified to do such interviews because they need the illusion of credibility.
I'm out of that.
Yes.
I'm out of that. So I don't want to hear left and right crap. They're all fucking nuts. That fucking shit post Me Too, where it went from people shouldn't sexually assault people, absolutely, to I don't like what you're talking about in your act, was fucking nuts. It was McCarthyism on the left. And now you've gone to the other side on the right. And the left was so fucked up, the right, the psycho right thinks that they're in the middle, and they're not. They're out of their fucking minds.
Burr is relentless about exposing the ego infection that drives the current podcast fad. This is not merely a commodity of attention. This relates to the essential need of middle-level comedians, YouTubers, and social media influencers who demand the facade of appearing intelligent. He is saying these guys pick a few articles off the internet, maybe half of a book, and suddenly their influencers are sitting in front of millions as philosophers. What emerges is a parade of repackaged ideologies in new vomit. Burr is careful to remind his audience that there is a vast difference between the knowledge somebody is finding out and the reader of it. Reading baloney about Einstein does not make you Einstein adjacent. These podcasters parade around acting like sitting down and diluting relativity into bite-sized audio clips. However precious their shtick is, elevates them from their previous existence.
So people are like, it's like a catcher trying to make a ball a strike. So they try to, and everyone does it. It's not just people with radio shows and podcasts. It's like fans do it. Like one of the funniest things ever is so many of my bits are online, which is great promotion to sell tickets.
For Burr, this is a disgusting level of polish rather than stupidity. And it becomes actively misleading for an audience that incorrectly uses confidence as a measure of intellect. These are stupid guys who have the mistaken impression of being smart, who seduce people no less stupid than them into believing regurgitation of their previous day's media on popcorn was motivation to engage people in discourse. What I find particularly attuned to Burr's argument is that the foremost identifiable duty of a comic is to cut down the hypocrisy of each side and to keep audiences laughing. Podcasters come into the game and define their thought leadership as political operatives. Burr does not care about the game. He speaks on politics, and the only way it remains interesting and honest is to dump on everyone equally.
In this last few months, you've had a few things happen, which is Ben Shapiro talked about going to one of your shows and complaining about you becoming woke, which sort of then created this...
He doesn't even know what that word means.
This stance invariably puts Burr at odds with political commentators who view all things through a partisan lens. Burr shows how easily commentators like Ben Shapiro try to pull entertainers into ideological silos. 1 minute Shapiro was praising Burr when Burr agreed with a position he liked, and then the next minute, when he leaves that track to go somewhere else, he is suddenly woke.
Definition of woke is white liberals' definition of woke, and they didn't even know what it was. They just took the word from black people. That's the worst thing about our people is not only do we take from other cultures, we don't even take the time to understand the definition.
This shape-shifting definition completely bespeaks what Burr has known from the beginning. These guys don't care about consistency. They care about co-opting voices for their empire. Worse yet, they feed off rage, inventing enemies, creating controversies to keep their concurrent audience paranoid, angry, and subscribed.
He went there to be annoyed so he can then have something to talk about, and then he can make money off of dividing his own country.
Yeah.
Those people, it's treasonous what they do.
Yeah.
To Burr, this isn't just shallow, it's borderline treasonous because it destroys the already tenuous cohesion of the public to earn clicks. His disgust at this grifting level is thick, and he is one of the rare people in the industry who doesn't then tone it down. He knows that Shapiro's notion of debate is nothing more than monetized manipulation.
Because now they think they're smart. It's just like, no, you're just a dumb guy that knows a lot of shit.
Yeah.
Like, intellect, to me, is how you process information. It's not just reading a bunch of smart shit, putting in your head, and then puking it out at people.
Burr does not even relieve scientists of his attacks. In a moment of surprise, Burr attacks Neil deGrasse Tyson, who, to Burr, is the perfect example of the celebrity expert. Burr asks rhetorically if Tyson is respected for life-changing contributions to science or for the way he has learned to charm and flaunt his lecturing and writing ability to ordinary people. Burr contrasts Tyson against guys like Lex Fridman and other pseudo-intellectual talkers who are more obsessed with manufacturing an intellectual sense of aesthetics than furthering discovery and intellect, and labels Tyson as a crooked cop with a pistol, signifying how packaging shallow surface knowledge dresses up what we assume is real authority.
Or like how you put stuff together. And like, somebody said to me one time, I go, Bill, you know, you're a really smart guy. And I go, yeah, in a sports bar.
Audiences confuse charisma with expertise, and we are once again duped into believing we are learning something fundamentally helpful. Burr sees yet another case of vanity under the surface. The need to always be the guy in the room who appears smarter than the rest. This virtue, combined with podcast culture, turns discourse into drama.
Well, I think about, like, ultimately what you're saying is it's about empathy, and specifically you have empathy for, you know, like you have the joke about, I think it's in an early special where you say something like, where are the wives you can just dump your day out on, right? Or you have the joke about, they say you can never...
See, that's still funny because it's so absurd.
What Burr really delivers is not criticism, but rather a model. He illustrates how comics, if they really want to remain true to themselves, should avoid colluding with political causes and selling their reputations. He reminds us all that the best comedy is disruptive, that it rips on both sides without regard, not that it serves as disposable propaganda. The moment you fly a partisan flag, you cease being funny and become a pawn. The moment the audience comes to you for validation and not laughter, you have sold your soul for relevance. Burr's vantage point is almost anachronistic, serving as a reminder that great stand-up works, or more accurately, is great, because they expose and ridicule everyone indiscriminately. Today's media landscape finds all its signals swimming in a sea of personalities scrambling for big-name status, yet Burr still clearly encourages moderation. His unwillingness to sit across from a politician or billionaire is not because he is weak, but because he is principled. He knows that the moment he sells his jokes for clout, he loses the one and only real weapon comedy provides, truth through laughter.
I was also being absurd back then, and then I was learning to be a comedian.
Yeah.
I'm still learning. So I was also learning like the skill of pushing people past what they wanted to hear, getting them to still listen, and then landing it somewhere that wasn't, oh my God, this is going to just be the most ignorant thing ever, and landing it somewhere else. So I was learning how to do, like, specials aren't just specials. Some of them are transitional.
And perhaps that's what makes his voice so important right now. Burr breaks through this din, not by claiming to think deeper, but by actually stating that he doesn't. This is a rare humility in a world where egos danced and strutted themselves into grandeur and superstardom, but also a welcome recognition of an acceptance that allows him to tell truths that many will never admit for fear of reputational backlash. Burr's message: comedy is never meant to be partisan cheerleading. When fans stop laughing and start clapping only for one side, comedy dies and culture suffers. And when podcasters' doses of bad vibes are confused for intellect, society suffers. Burr calling war is not just a joke. It's a warning to comedians to stop engaging in philosopher cosplay. Or, like all said and done, that next generation is going to vote based on who told them their favorite movie was awesome, not laugh at jokes.
So he can then have something to talk about, and then he can make money off of dividing his own country.
Bill Burr's crusade against idiot podcasters is only growing. Not in Burr's mind because he's a guy who enjoys starting fights, but because the ramifications outstrip the podcasts themselves. The podcasters aren't just background noise these days, but have developed into one of the most powerful cultural megaphones in the world. Burr can see how casual conversations zip into the bloodstream of society to slowly affect the way people think about politics, science, history, and even morality. He's fearful of that because most of the guys with those microphones aren't ready for that responsibility. They want fame without homework, influence without discipline, viewership without the duty to care for that viewership, and they aren't sharpening facts or discourse, but focusing on the vibes, their half-cooked theories, and what snippets they think could trend on social media. Burr's no-show in this whole sham is hardly a shrug of nostalgia, it's survival. He knows exactly what happens when comedians stop being funny and start pretending to sell themselves as cultural prophets. The art collapses and the fans get exploited, and the damage reverberates through generations.
Yes, but to be fair, or not to be fair, the fact is that it worked for what his goal is, which is then it became a thing online where then a certain portion of the right complain about how you're woke.
Racists.
And more racist.
They're racist.
Burr problematizes how the vast majority of podcast conversations feel very superficial, especially when those conversations involve a heavy hitter. A prime minister comes in, a billionaire walks in, and suddenly the podcaster forgets to confront anything of substance. Then they spend hours cackling about gym workouts, the best movies of all time, or which video game they were addicted to as a kid. They are people who have an impact on policy, therefore who impact decisions about economics, wars, and global crises. Posturing them as gaming friends not only makes them relatable, that type of conversation covers instead of scrutinizes what they might consider dangerous and irresponsible policy, and puts a stamp of approval on that relationship, and leaves the listener or consumer with the impression that leadership is just a matter of who has a similar snacking preference as you do, and that to Burr is the rotten center of it. podcast culture has been infected with the notion of needing to relate to others instead of taking a responsible approach to podcasting. The audience isn't asking for homework, they're asking for charisma, yet charisma undermines the truth far too often.
There's an ugliness that's out there right now where, there's certain podcasts out there that if you're a racist, if you're an anti-Semite, if you're a psycho-nationalist and you want a softball interview, there's podcasts out there where you can, and they will laugh at your fucking bad jokes.
In Burr's case, the devil is not one podcaster, it is the ego. Having witnessed how intoxicating it is to buy into your own genius when the audience reacts to every last sentence with thunderous applause, Burr warns of the curse of dumb confidence, stupid guys who read a bit then act like geniuses, dragging their equally clueless fan bases down the rabbit hole. Audiences who then regurgitate the same dumb pseudo-intellectual nonsense, the same recycled quotes, and it all snowballs into what Burr calls the cult of dumb confidence. When the blind also lead the blind, on platforms with millions of subscribers, it just turns into an echo chamber dressed up to look like free speech. Rogan and Schultz and their peers are not monsters. They are merely bearers of symptoms of a much larger, rampant sickness that conveys the message it is okay, even worthy, to cloak your ignorance or lack of knowledge in a manner that suggests you should be followed. Burr systematically breaks that down like it was a jackhammer, because he exhibits from the stand-up side of the equation how brutal authenticity can be. You can fool an algorithm, you can even fool a newspaper headline, but you are never going to be able to fool an audience full of people who were sold bad material. Comedy eliminates charlatans while podcasts elevate them.
There's a really ugly thing that's going on out there, and it's the kind of things we've already seen this, and we've seen what it does to a nation, and it's not the way to go.
Burr's call isn't just for comics, it's for everyone. Stop feeding platforms that amplify extremists. Support truth-telling comedians, demand accountability, and never confuse charisma for knowledge. Support journalists who ask hard questions instead of broing out with billionaires. And most importantly, don't fall for the trick of thinking that charisma equals knowledge. The more you recognize the pattern, the weaker its hold becomes. Burr can scream about idiot podcasters all day, but until audiences start changing their choices, nothing changes.